I'll be lucky I can reach the word.
I went out and took some pictures and sent them to DJ. So
That's good. That's good.
it's on it.
Started to turn on a little bit.
Yeah, it's about this big.
I saw that going off. Yes.
What is that?
6 months. I had something lined up.
Can I call it? Jordan asked me to come down September, October, they're coming home November, Christmas.
I've been mispronouncing it.
Super European.
TKI. So if you're talking to them on the phone, you say, well, it's TKI. But if they're finance director, I think that they would want to be introduced as the finance director for Central Kirk. Publicly, they don't like to use the term TKI. Okay. Because there's no I. It's to Central Purely Incorporated. Now it's some other
We're gonna team up on
LLC possibly. I don't know for sure.
No, we're gonna team up on that one.
We are, it's only once.
I went down there, I had to get a new bag.
Yep.
And really going home and didn't even know
Mr. Hellberg is here.
So my nephew just came over today.
Getting underway in about 10 seconds. 9, 8, 4, 3. Good evening and welcome to the Defiance City Council meeting for tonight, September 6th, 2022. Before we get underway this evening, Mr. Corbett will open us up in prayer.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we're just grateful for the day you blessed us with, God, and for this community that we call home. And we just thank you for all the blessings you give us. God, we ask as we conduct this meeting tonight that you give us wisdom, that in our deliberations and in our work tonight, we honor you. We pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. This meeting is called to order. Let the record show that all members of council are present this evening. Would you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we get underway this evening, we have two guests this evening. First up, Kirsty Mack is here to discuss with us the Bicentennial Committee down at the DDVB. Thanks for being our guest.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having us. I appreciate it. I should never touch the microphone. It's never a good idea. It's just going to stay right there where it's at. Okay, so my reason for being here is to do an official presentation, be a minimal presentation. There will be more to add later on, but basic information for the Bicentennial Committee for all of you. Next year, 2023, will be the City of Defiance's Bicentennial. So that is the date that the city was plotted and it was actually written down and all of that stuff. So there's a lot of dates that float around. So this was a major decision between city administration as well as the folks over at the Tuttle Museum based on what year do you celebrate the Bicentennial with all of these things that cross. So 2023 is the year. So up on the screen, as well as in front of each one of you, you have the full branding guide. So that was a partnership between the committee and Yvonne Dale with YD Graphics. So those are the images that will start popping up in different areas. There are lots of options, banners, as well as the Christmas ornament. So everybody gets a sneak peek of the 2023 City of Defiance Christmas ornament there down in the corner. So those are the types of things that we will be working on as a committee to kind of tie our colors around the red, white, and blue with the Bicentennial and those kinds of things. A lot of the memorabilia will tie into that color scheme. A lot of things you'll see throughout the community will tie into that as well. Started talking to Kirchers already about the downtown flowers, how you can tie in some red, white, and blue. I am not a florist. Didn't know there were real like blue flowers. There are. So we're gonna tie in some blue flowers as well with the blue banners. On the far right on the corner there, that will be the actual banner. Those will be hung through all of downtown. As you all see banners now, I believe it's Defiance football up in the downtown right now, as well as on the bridges. I'm not sure if everybody has noticed, but there are now welcome banners on all of the bridges coming into the downtown area, including the Jefferson Street Bridge. So all of those will be replaced with the bicentennial banners next year. So that's just a little bit of so that you guys kind of know there is a committee. A few of the committee members are there in the audience. So we've taken a group of people and made co-chairs through the DDBB. So there's a major committee through us, and it's our office, the chamber, the Strady Center for the Arts, and the public library, as well as the Tuttle Museum. Makes up the major committee members, and then there are a lot of other committee members that come in with their expertise. Down at History Studios, we've partnered with her on a lot of projects already. I think she's very excited for next year, so we're looking forward to seeing all of her projects as well. So, yes, sir.
The banners, are
Yes.
those on the light poles?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mayor McCann, some years back, we used to have banners that would go building to building like the lights that we have downtown Defiance. It's been a number of years. And is that still something that's viable, or is that something that we can't do anymore?
Those were in the 300 block, if I recall, Mr. Uresti, correct? Anybody else remember? Kirsty?
They were.
And I don't, those were attached to private buildings, possibly your organization.
Correct. The only thing that
Those are options also.
The only thing that we know, we did have the previous attachments inspected last year where the banners used to hang on the buildings. Those will all need to be redone. So I would say there's a possibility, but they're all new building owners, and we would have to get new permissions and have new attachments replaced for safety.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Committee members, do you have anything to add? It's gonna be a very busy year. We are not looking to do just one event. We are looking to spread out events throughout the entire year next year and partnering with a lot of other entities within the community to tie in pieces of the bicentennial with their events. Obviously, we have events all year long. It's not just our organization, it's not just the Strady, it's not just the library. We have a lot of entities in the community that do amazing events. So we're starting to talk with each one of them to see what bits and pieces they can add into their event to be able to celebrate all year long. We are looking at one specific date next year to have what we're calling just a birthday bash for now. It may have a fancier name by the time we get there. That is April 28th, 2023, which is a Friday. So that is going to be the big celebration day because that actually ties into the date where it was recorded. Thank you. I was like, I knew there was a word and I've been trying to figure out this word for about an hour. So that's the date it was recorded. So it works out really well. It falls on a Friday this year. We've already talked to Defiance High School about a way we can partner with them on some things. We've worked with the library and their staff, as well as the city to do some really neat things down at the fort grounds potentially as well, so.
Let me just make something clear. When Mr. Mack came on board back in January, I discussed with him the bicentennial to make sure we had it right. He checked with the Secretary of State. We were indeed platted in 1822. So the streets were drawn, the property lines were drawn, some subdivisions were named and blah, blah, blah. That was not recorded till 23. So that plat doesn't, like anything else, it doesn't become official until it's recorded. So that's why we've gone with this April 23 after Mr. Mack's due diligence on that. So that's how we came up with that. I think it was good homework. Thank you for doing that. And so that's our story, and I guess we're sticking to it.
That's right. Well, I will say stay tuned for lots of other fun things, all sorts of memorabilia, time capsules, all sorts of stuff will be popping up. So wanted you all to be aware there is a committee, there is planning being done. And as my teenager tells me, I'm being extra about it. So be prepared for all the extra for next year, so.
Thanks for being our guest this evening.
Yes, thank you.
Next up, Erica Willitzer, the CIC Executive Director, is here to give us her monthly update. Thanks for being our guest this evening.
Well, thanks for having me. Well, I'll just start out by saying that I appreciate all those that were able to make it to the Cinderlow Curly groundbreaking. John, I know you were there and you were there. I was gonna say hi and then I don't even know what happened. You disappeared, but thanks for coming. It was
nice, very nice.
It was a great event and the mayor hit a home run on everything that he said. So with that, I wanna kind of talk about some of the other things that we have going on. Today we actually did a tour of the 1918 building, which was very good, I thought, Mayor, didn't you? I mean, obviously, we can't say the name of the developer, but it was very
The folks loved
positive.
the building, and they just, raved about the building, both, especially the curb appeal, which I think is what attracts so many of us. And, it was a very positive conversation.
Yeah, it was positive. We'll see, we have to do a couple follow-up items with that group and we'll see where it goes. The other thing that I found out today, I haven't even talked to the mayor about this yet, is I found out that there's a potential end user for Brian Keller's spec building. What that will mean is that they want to break ground as soon as possible, but they're also wanting an enterprise zone agreement, which they're wanting to fast track it through the county commissioner's office, which would also require your approval. We would do it at the 60% abatement level, which would mean no school approval. That does not mean that I'm not going to talk to the school. Mr. Keller has already said that he is going to make a nice contribution to the school and then also to Fort County. But just a heads up that I will be working this week on the legislation for that, working with Sean and working with the county on that, and I'll be presenting something soon. So there's an update on that. Also, another company has put in an offer on an existing building, cannot say the name yet. They're doing their due diligence and we're hoping in October to make that announcement for that project. And then in general, just working on several other expansion projects for local companies. The other thing that I wanted to talk about tonight was workforce. That's still something that we're working diligently on. We met recently with Goodwill Industries, and they have some amazing services for those with barriers, and they're wanting to really amp up their services here in Defiance County. So Hannah Waterman, our new workforce director, is working with them closely. She's also reaching out to local law enforcement, including Chief Schaefer, and judges, and trying to be the connector between our local manufacturers, employers, with those individuals that are ready to get back into the workforce. So she's working on that. She's also planning some bus tours, some with an ag focus, some with an engineering focus for the fall with the local schools. And with her, she's got a lot of marketing experience. She's also working on a lot of our marketing materials for social media. We sent out postcards that I've been talking about to all the Defiance County businesses. We're gonna do another postcard and we're designing it in an effort that's targeting our youth. We're thinking about, instead of just sending it to Defiance County businesses, we're gonna send it to all of Defiance County residents that talk about all the opportunities that we have here for our youth. And we're gonna see how that works. We've had a great response with the other postcard. It's all about an all above approach when it comes to marketing. And if somebody can actually touch something, that's just another added thing. So we're gonna try that to make sure that our youth know that we have some amazing opportunities. In addition to that, we also have a podcast that's called Working It. The mayor is our guest tomorrow. I'm sure we'll have nothing to talk about. Did you know about that? You forgot, didn't you? You're like, I'm so tired of spending all my time with that girl.
It's good when I'm spending time with the economic development.
Okay.
By golly, it is tomorrow afternoon.
It is tomorrow afternoon. And then we also hired Paige Johnson. She's our new operations and business development manager. Super excited about having her on board. She's already in the process of developing a new mentoring program that we can use throughout the county. She's going to be reaching out to some of our existing business leaders that have a lot of experience in trying to team them up with some of our youth or newer business leaders, and just so that it's not so hard just to have to do it on your own. As you find out, and what we hear back from a lot of people is they want to try to do a new business, or they're in business that 3 to 5 years, and they sometimes just don't feel like they have support. And if they have that support, they seem to go a lot further. So we're starting that program. And she's also going to be working on our membership and investor engagement, really reaching out to our existing local businesses and seeing what they need. We try to provide as much, as we can from a resource standpoint, but there might be something out there that we are not aware of. And so she's starting some new engagement activities there. Any questions? Yes.
Just out of curiosity, is the former credit adjustments building on your list of properties to promote? And maybe, is it something that's up and available now? And have
Yes.
you seen any interest in that?
Yes, so it is on our website. It is being marketed. It has been shown multiple times. And we're just trying to find that one that will, that take it. I know there were several parties that were interested, but we're still marketing it heavily and promoting it on all of our platforms. And I know that the local broker is doing that as well.
Thank you.
That's all his buildings or just the one? I mean,
Oh, was like specifically that one.
okay, what about the ones out on the east side? I said they're up for sale, but we,
Oh,
There's
interest there too.
There's interest there too.
There's a lot of interest there too.
Negotiating's in the works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yes. So I would say there's a lot of interest there. We just have to get to the point where we can announce it. Now, I don't know where we're at with the old credit adjustment building, but I do know there's been a lot of activity and a lot of showings.
and I also see that they got a sign up where the Dream Center is for sale, that property.
All of that was owned
Right.
by
That's all the same.
I thought that was
right?
the-
Lammer,
Yes.
yes.
Oh, the same thing.
I know more than I can say on television,
Yeah.
Mr. Waxler.
Okay,
You wanna call me tomorrow, I'm happy to discuss with you what I can, but I'm sorry.
I was just curious with the Dream Center,
Yeah.
I mean, if that was something they were looking at, I didn't know,
I don't know about that. I don't know the situation with the Dream Center, but I
Okay.
do know that there's interested parties in that property.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, that was a lot of good news. Thank you very much.
thanks.
With that, I've reviewed the index minutes for the city council meeting of August 23rd, 2022. Do we have a motion to amend or correct the minutes as presented? If there is none, I will approve the same. Do we have a request for liaison meeting or any reports? Without any, do we have any comments from council tonight? Mr. Waxler?
Yeah, I had a phone call and I went down to the corner of Dietrich and Jackson, like the old Kiesling property.
Yes.
I think it's actually a Dietrich address, but
It's the
anyway,
Southeast corner.
yeah, the garage roof and everything's fell on in, it's almost in, and the neighbors, called me and said there's kids going in and out of there, so something's gonna happen bad there if we don't address that. I don't know what the address is, I tried to look at the signs.
Southeast corner, right, Mr.
Yeah.
Waxler?
And then, 758 Jackson, there's two vehicles setting up in that driveway that's unblocked or just, they look like just junk vehicles, but I'm gonna check that out. I'm more worried about the roof with the kids, if there's kids going in there truly, so,
It's very understandable.
yeah.
And I
All
will
right.
get zoning conditions on it tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rusty?
I got several questions. The first one deals with obstruction due to the tree limbs on on the city right away. How does somebody address that? Let's just say they're too low, they come up to the stop sign and they can't have a clear view of traffic coming. And it's just basically maybe some limbs that need to be cut or whatever.
Call city offices,
Who?
call the city offices. They can call the street department directly. They can use the GoGov app. It's the most commonly used, but it's not my recommendation, and that's social media. It's a crapshoot as to whether or not one of us might notice that, Mr. Uresti. We will get GoGov, we will obviously take phone messages. And if people want to put it on social media, one of us may see it, but one of us may not. So truly the best way is just use standard communication.
What if somebody put it on as a nuisance? Would it be redirected to the right?
Sure.
Because in essence, that's something that a lot of the people know dealing with
Yeah.
issues or whatever,
I
but
think Mr. Mack and I were discussing it this morning, because I did see it on Facebook.
so did I.
But he had said that there had been a report on GoGov about the one that I was pointing out was
Okay.
Clinton and M Blanche. We went out and looked at it, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's already taken care of, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, for reference, we had crews out, attending to site restrictions at different intersections all day today. Things that had come in on GoGov, phone calls that were made. So we have had crews out, working on those types of issues.
The reason why I'm bringing it up is like the Facebook page you probably saw that I saw, there were like a lot of the people who were writing were confused as to who they contact. And I think it's one of those things that we just, like what you said, direct them to the city, and then they'll probably be directed to where it needs to be done so it can be taken care of.
You can go to the city's website.
No.
Our emails are on there. People can email any of us.
No.
It's not a law director function, but if you email the law director, he'll make sure it probably gets over to Mr. Mack, and Mr. Mack will take care of it from there.
I like my messages in all caps.
Okay. Again? I have another question. Sure. Okay, I talked to the mayor earlier in regards to something I brought up at city council several weeks ago in regards to cats. And again, reading those same Facebook statements that are made about baby litters, basically on Facebook. What do they do with the kitties that they find in their, in their close to their homes or whatever? Where can they take them? And most of the comments are that there's no place that they can be taken to because they're all full. So what do you do with the cats? And I guess that's my question. Is there anything that responsible people can do when they find something on their property? Where can they take them? What can they do with them?
I don't know how many times we've discussed this here, but every time we do, people come to me and say, euthanization, Mike, euthanize them. That's what we used to do. And apparently that was successful. I don't know. I didn't hold a position here at City Hall when that was going on. I do recall that my mother was active in the animal shelter at that time. She hated what she called kill day, but it was a day where they would take all of those feral cats that were taken out to the shelter and they would euthanize them. It was humanely done, but it wasn't very popular. And however many years ago, the Humane Society went with a no-kill philosophy. But I think, I hate to lob this back in your court, but what I need to know from our city council is what level of tolerance do you folks have for euthanization? Because that has to be one of the first questions. If it's absolutely not, we don't support that idea, then we have to go to Plan B, which is going to be much more expensive. And I don't really know the status of the shelter right now, especially when it comes to cats. Things right now seem to be in a state of flux. It's more of the county's responsibility for animal control. But we're obviously willing to help and partner in some way that we can.
Can we possibly revisit, some of the spay and neuter ideas, like a mobile spay and neuter? I know those exist, and I know that there are groups that operate out of surrounding areas that do collect and spay and neuter cats, and, just some sort of
so
option.
fun, I don't know how much time you wanna spend on this, but then the question is, Mr. Mast, so say they come once every 2 weeks. What do we do with the cats that we collect over a 2-week period? They have to be sheltered, they have to be fed, they have to be watered, they have to be cleaned up after. Where are we gonna do that? And
Oh, I understand there's logistics involved with it, but it's.
I made a fair amount of notes. I guess I can get to those.
I think the point is, I guess, that, I don't know if Mr. Rusty would agree or not, but it's gotten to be something that's a pretty regular conversation throughout.
Don't get me wrong, I
Town.
don't like killing things,
Oh, I know.
but it's, a lot of people have suggested that we go back to that. Things I typed was hire an animal control officer, equip that officer with all the needed tools, buy a vehicle, most likely a full-size van or truck, train the officer and possibly staff, build or remodel a facility. Are you seeing dollar signs over there, Mr. Leonard? Deal with the public outcry over euthanization, transport cats for spay or neuter, release cats back into the community, which when we've discussed that, that's exactly what we've discussed. We would bring those cats in, spay and neuter, and then release them back. That makes no sense to me. I realize once they're spayed and neutered, they can't breed, but then they're left to their own devices. And as troubling as euthanization is, it seems a whole lot more humane than the cat that gets struck on the street and injured and then is left to fend for itself with a broken leg or worse, and that sort of thing. So
Well, the cats are already in that position, though.
yes,
So we spay and neuter them, you're just returning them to their initial position. It's not,
right.
so they're gonna be there regardless.
Cats would have to be vaccinated. I believe
With
they
the ability
vaccinate
to
them for,
reproduce.
I'm allergic to cats, so I don't have a cat. But I know there's feline leukemia or something that they have to be vaccinated for. Then I wrote down, what are volunteer roles? What would volunteers be available? The shelter has some volunteers, but I've read repeated article. I read everything that's written about the Humane Society in the newspaper. And I'm friends with Lisa and Jim Weiner, so I hear it from Lisa directly. And, those are some of my thoughts, Mr. Rusty. And as I can say, there's a lot of dollar signs there.
And I think the dollar signs are associated with anything we do. But I think the bottom line to it is just, and I guess this is why I bring it up, is I guess we're the leadership of this community, and what we should do is at least sit down again, if we need to do that, and discuss it. What are those expenses? What are the the expectations if it goes to putting a cost to something, or those types of things, and then we can make a decision as to whether it's cost effective or whether it's something that the people of Defiance want. I guess that's what I'd like to do, is just follow up with Mr. Mastis. It's like, yes, some things are going to happen, but what else can we do? Because we know like what you said initially, like take them someplace and it's over. But I don't think that's not what I would want. But that would be maybe my last choice. But I'd like to at least discuss what are the other ones in front of that last resort.
Okay.
And I know your plate's full, and I'd hate to ask you for something, but we have budget coming up next month, the month after. And if there is something that we need to budget out, that's basically what we want to start with, is at least have some idea of what it is going to cost and whether we can afford it. Or what else is there?
Okay, budget-wise, I think what we talked about internally was possibly making a financial contribution to the folks at the Fort Defiance Humane Society. And we did that a few years ago. We gave them some money. I don't remember what it was, to aid in the management of feral cats. That would probably be our first recommendation. They've got the facility, they've got the structure, they've got the knowledge, they've got everything. So to write them a check would be one way to go. The options, the alternatives from there, you know, hiring another person, buying trucks, you're in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Not to mention the fact of what it's gonna cost to spay and neuter each cat.
I think if there ends up a big outcry against euthanization, that somebody on a volunteer basis is gonna have to step up to help. And I'm talking about the community as a whole. There's a lot of those programs where they are taking care of cats in this way. It's on a volunteer basis. It's people banding together to do it. So we can put it out there, and hopefully we can at least get some response on the options and see what people have to say.
But I haven't seen much done. I don't spend much time on Facebook. I routinely call it false book because there is so much misinformation. So much misinformation. So many people so poorly informed that make comments that are frankly hurtful. That they're not only hurtful for people that live here. I'm sitting back there looking at my economic development director, and we know that people that are looking at our community are looking at some of that stuff on Facebook. And it doesn't paint always a real good picture for us. So I don't encourage it. Obviously, when someone talked about blocked stop signs or intersections, huge safety concern. Not that feral cats aren't, but certainly not as big as a black stop sign. You know, there's nothing wrong with city council bringing ideas to the administration on what to deal with feral cats. I appreciate your suggestions. I appreciate your suggestions.
I just think we've had a nice discussion here. At least we got some thoughts on it. And all my concern is, and I think that's what this table's for, is just to have a discussion again. And if the discussion ends that there's nothing we can do, then there's nothing we can do.
Yeah. And
but I think we need to put a period to it. And I think that's kind of like where I'm at, because in essence, there's still a lot of people that basically, I'd hate to have them put the narrative to what we can do.
I did meet with the veterinarians.
Yeah.
Our local veterinarians said we're as busy as we can't handle any more work. So any idea of working with them is not a viable idea. Love the time I spent with them.
Didn't a couple of them say though they had college kids they was gonna try to get involved in this and nothing ever happened there?
I don't recall that, Mr. Waxler. Seems very logical that a college veterinary student could assist with this. They're not allowed to do those procedures. A college student that's studying veterinary medicine is not allowed to, I was told by the vets, that they're not allowed to do those spays and neuters.
I just know that was mentioned the last time we talked about this, but I never heard any more about it.
Well, I'm guessing because once I talked to the veterinarians, I realized that wasn't gonna work.
All right.
Thank you. Mr. Engel?
Yes, just a couple of things. I guess since I've been on council, I know we have talked about this cat thing for probably 18 years off and on. Nothing's really been, a whole lot can be done about it. Also, I think the feral cats, the biggest problem is, and I know this for a fact because it's happening in my neighborhood. People are feeding these cats and don't do anything else, and they just keep coming and coming and coming and coming, and that's why I think the neighborhoods have a lot of stray cats that come in and then they want to come in and all that. I don't know what we can do about it. We've talked about this thing for 18 years, so.
We've cited, Mr. O'Donnell, maybe you want to talk about this before I say something that is not accurate, but we have cited property owners for feeding cats And the result was,
There was a bag containing a dead cat was brought and the gentleman tried to present that to the judge. So there's more going on there than the feeding of cats.
Yeah, and I know too, there's people around where I live ended up and had a cat, bought another cat, and the first cat they had, they don't have anything to do with it, so that cat's roaming. And it's actually a pretty nice cat, but it's been neutered and all that, but I think a lot of that's the problem. People just don't take care of their cats or dogs. In my opinion.
if you go to the Crescent News' website and you search the word feral, all kinds of articles going back years and years come up, not only for us here, but the other significant community that's talked about feral cats is mostly Napoleon. I think there's maybe a little bit with Hicksville, but so, you know, they've talked about what they've done over there. I know Mr. Mack has to have a conversation with Napoleon here soon. Maybe he can see if they have done anything. My guess is they haven't, because the options, it's all about the money, as Mr. Uresti said, and we're going into budget, and council wants to look at a line item to deal with that, so be it. If independently you wanna call Lisa Weiner and see what the status of that Humane Society is, I would encourage you to do that, because I don't know. I've tried to follow it in the newspaper, but I really don't know.
I would add, it's not just the area humane society that takes in cats. We also, as a community, do a lot for cats. Honestly, probably more than some of the surrounding areas. Friends of Felines is a world-class organization. People move here just to help volunteer at that place. If you get calls on it, obviously check those two places first, but you can also look at the surrounding area. We don't have the only humane society in the area. I think we do have the only Friends of Felines, but you can always feel free to check out the surrounding area for someone who would take in some cats in one of those places.
For the most part, I think it's a really good point that, again, how do you fund, and this isn't a small project, this is basically a major project until you get it under control. But how do you fund something like that? And I think that's, taking an earnest discussion on something like that, can it be? And if not, then what are the alternate?
When you brought this up, I think probably the last time we discussed this, or maybe the time before, which I believe we were in the pandemic, but beginning to come out of it. The number of pet adoptions and pet purchases that people made during the pandemic was an unbelievable number, like up 60% across the country of people that adopted dogs, cats, iguanas, and different pets because they were home. Well, guess what? The pandemic slowed down. People had to go back to work, and it's like, oh my, what do I do with this dog, cat, iguana now? So they were taking them to shelters. Shelters filled up. They couldn't take any more. And I just kept reading articles about that and various things that come across my desk. And I'm guessing it's still a problem for a lot of shelters.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Mrs. Crutch.
I think what you said, Mayor, was very important as far as calling the Humane Society to find out the cost, because when we talk about a budget, we should actually know the cost of what a spay and a neuter is, so that we kind of understand, if we can do 25 or 50 cats or whatever. Mr. Uresti has a good point, the feral cats are a problem and taking them someplace, but if we don't know the numbers, then sitting around here, we just don't have an idea.
He had all the numbers last time we talked about it.
As far as exactly how much a spay and a neuter cost,
Yeah,
and,
he had them.
I may have gotten those from Lisa.
okay,
The conversation didn't get that far with the vets, in all honesty, Mrs. Crutch, because they just said, we can't do any more.
right.
We can't do any more than what we're already taking care of. They're not taking any new customers. at least they weren't back then. That could have changed now. I don't wanna scare anybody away from calling a vet.
Right.
But I'll say this much, I think before I would invest in a dog or a cat or any type of a pet, I would contact the veterinary office and say, if I get this new pet, are you gonna be able to help me with it?
Well, even if we could check into some retired vets, you know, cause maybe they would come out of the woodwork and actually do some things as retirement.
See, Dr. Rahman passed away,
Well,
the older
Patton
Dr.
is what I'm
Rahman.
thinking of, yeah.
Dr. Van Valère,
Yeah.
he's in Rotary. I spoke to him one day. I think for licensing or liability reasons, he wasn't able to help. I forget the circumstances.
Yeah, if they don't keep up their licensure, I understand that part.
Right.
There are a lot of moving parts here. Even if we do throw money at them, there still has to be a body to take care of a situation, so.
Too often government thinks the answer is throw money at it, and the money just
Yeah.
evaporates.
Well, thank you. Were there any other issues or comments from council?
Humane Society is my favorite charity. If somebody passes away, then I feel like I need to make a contribution. I send it their way, and I would encourage others to do the same.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes, along with the feline conversation, it would be good if we could find someone in the rural community that maybe could inherit a barn cat. Cause that would be great for the rodent population in those areas.
Yep. Okay.
All right. And with that, any other comments from council before we move on? All right, there's nothing on my desk this evening. To the Board of Control, Mayor McCann.
Thank you. I believe there was an article in today's paper about West High. They were out there today painting lines on the street where they'll be making their saw cuts to begin the water line installation. That water line project will start at Harding and go towards Clinton. They do have to dig out into Clinton Street to make that connection. That piece of it will be done in the evenings. But in the meantime, if people can avoid that area, I would strongly encourage them to do that. They'll need to travel very safely. We have construction workers there that are moms and dads and husbands and fathers, and we want to make sure they get home at night. So the road is in not the best of shape now. As they start digging out there, it's only going to get worse. So, I guess my route home, once they start digging, will be to go on out Sessions and cut across on Latchaw. That's really all. Just be careful, please. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Mack?
Yes, Mr. President. I just wanted to make council aware that the engineer will be having her pre-construction meeting for the South Clinton sidewalks tomorrow. Looking for a start date sometime in the next 2 weeks, probably sooner rather than later on that next 2 weeks, but that is the plan moving forward on it. So I wanted to make you aware that was in the process. Also, Mr. President, you brought up an issue on Arabella concerning some one-way
Yes.
issues. So I drove through there extensively, looked back at some old pictures. There may be some signage that was there before, isn't there now. What I would ask is keep an eye on it. An issue that was brought up was with the Dietrich Street crossing being closed. It rerouted a lot of traffic and made people drive ways they don't normally drive to things.
Which would mean
So if-
unusually high.
Yes, so if that
number of
was,
people perhaps.
so if it slows down in the meantime, hopefully it's taken care of. If not, if it persists, please let me know, and we can look at that signage. But I wanted to clarify, was it they were going the wrong way down the alley, or they were coming out of the alley and going the wrong way on Arabella?
Turning off of Jefferson
Heading
Heading
west
west.
on Arabella.
on Arabella, when it's,
Coming out onto Clinton.
yeah.
That's a lot, okay.
I seen it, they were coming toward
Yeah.
Clinton.
Okay.
Not seen it recently, but I've seen
Yeah.
it.
I did too.
Okay. Yes, I would just ask that, now that the crossing is back open, if it persists, let us know.
All right.
And
And
then,
I told the lady who was concerned that I would follow up, and since you brought it up, I won't bother you about it, but I'll let her know, and she'll keep an eye peeled and let me know if
Sure she will.
it continues. Thank
I
you.
received a text last week from somebody that is running these cameras tonight that told me they saw it too. So.
Thank
That's
you.
all.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Mr. President, just two loose ends from last meeting that I wanted to tie up. Mr. Mast, you had asked about further restrictions on fireworks under the new state law and under House Bill 172. The current statute allows you to, as legislative body, to further restrict the baseline rules and regulations that the state General Assembly and State Fire Marshal have set, meaning you can further restrict or ban fireworks outright if you so choose. We did release a message on GoGov last week, just before Labor Day, outlining the basic regulations for 1.4G consumer grade fireworks. Unfortunately, you cannot, it's a floor and not a ceiling, you cannot add to the acceptable dates of when you can ignite 1.4G fireworks. However, I will tell you, if there's any fireworks launched for the bicentennial next year, the law department will be too busy to prosecute those on April 28th. And then Mr. Uresti, you asked about the chickens crossing the road. And
To the park.
to the park, okay, thank you. I'm just joking there somewhere, can't find it. Our ordinance allows for up to 4 chickens in single-family residential zoning districts. You cannot slaughter the chickens for commercial sales, and they require the covered enclosure for protection from the elements. You also have to have a fence area of the yard, and that covered enclosure or fenced area shall be no closer than 25 feet from any residential structure on an adjacent lot, not your residential structure, but the one on the adjacent lot. And it's also has to comply with the setbacks in our zoning code. And then the noise, odor, and other nuisance standards that we have in other parts of our code still apply. So those are the rules that we have on chickens.
Is that hens only, Mr. O'Donnell?
No, somebody did say they saw them. So
Oh, maybe they made up the rules.
Mr. Engel?
Yes, so do they, these so-called chickens, do they have to be at the backyard, side yard? 'Cause I had this one other time, they could not be in the front yard, they had to be in the backyard.
Yes,
And no roosters.
and that's the result of when you apply the dimensional standards of where you can put a fence and a covered enclosure, yes.
Because where this at, it was too close to the sidewalk.
No roosters?
No roosters.
No roosters?
No roosters.
I'm guessing the chickens you talked about got too close to KFC.
They could be. They were heading to my grill. And they just-
Original or extra crispy, I don't know, but.
No roosters.
Forgive us.
Or nuggets.
And that's all you have, Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes, if we get a handle on this, we will not have feral chickens.
Kind of worried, I really want to see them.
Problem solved.
I did see them.
Found that joke.
I've seen them too.
It's called
And
free
Mr.
range
Leonard.
Defiance, isn't it?
I can't follow any of that, so I have nothing at this time.
Nothing at this time? Thank you. We do have 3 items of legislation for discussion this evening.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance authorizing a contract for the installation of a playground equipment from Ventura LLC and declare an emergency.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Thank you, Mr. President. You may recall council approved the 2 contracts for the purchase of these new playground structures last month. And the standard and this contract is for the installation and the construction. Now, the standard for these types of projects is the lowest and best bid at competitive bidding. However, that rule is not absolute. There are situations where the law recognizes that it's in the best interest of your constituents to deviate from that standard. These are situations where you determine that a specific contractor is the subject of an exclusive patent or franchise that renders the competition unhelpful, or if that contractor is uniquely qualified to perform the work. And just to give an example, competitive bidding really helps your constituents on costs when you're purchasing road salt. It may not be in their best interest when you're building a children's playground. And in our case, Ventura LLC out of Brighton, Michigan is in the business of installing playgrounds. That's what they do. They are the sole source provider of this service in a manner that preserves the warranty for the equipment that you authorized the purchase of last month. The cost of this installation is $64,900, and emergency passage would enable us to proceed with the playground construction and complete the project in time for the grant deadline. And I believe you have the, I guess, a rendering of the playground on the screen.
Mr. Waxler?
What are we doing? Are we moving it? Where's the road going? What are we doing with the road? They got that get figured out?
We went down there, Mr. Waxler. We believe that the best option is multiple speed bumps on the road that would run east and west. And then the stub road that comes down off the hill to control vehicular traffic through there, the speed. You put enough speed bumps that are, you know, from,
All them kids are gonna be crossing that road where you're moving it.
the speed bumps are from you to me apart. Nobody's gonna be able to go in fast enough that they, you know, they'll be aware.
Do we really need to leave it open?
I wouldn't mind meeting you down there, anybody that wants to go down there. The long-term plan is to close the access off of East 2nd Street. So the only access back into Kingsbury would be Auglaize Street.
Mm-hmm.
So
They'll come around to get in.
you would come on Auglaize, turn on that east-west road, and then circle back around.
So maybe we ought to rethink about where we're putting the playground.
The issue with the playground is the highest elevation down there. And ADA requires us to have, I think it's like 18 inches. It may only be 12, but it's very thick cushion. When a child falls. So when that floods, the only real option for us is mulch. Everything else is cost prohibitive when it does flood. So the mulch, we can do that. We do it all the time. When it floods, we'll have to be dug out and then new mulch put in because it's gonna be loaded with river water. It's the highest elevation in Kingsbury Park, is that area.
And how often is that gonna get water up to there? Cause we know it does.
We know, when we asked Mr. Sarragan about it, he said the water doesn't get up there very often. So how often does Kingsbury Pool itself flood? And this is, if you can stand there and see it, it's significantly higher than the pool itself.
I just don't like the idea of the kids crossing the road and going to the park there. I mean, that's just me.
I understand that.
I think with the speed bumps and appropriate signage, that's curvy enough road that, I mean.
Maybe closer speed bumps, maybe make it really miserable for them to even drive through there.
And Ms. Elders, can you put up the?
You know, you can get them plastic ones, I mean, you can remove it
Yeah.
and stuff, you know.
No, the overhead drawing that shows the new walking paths or walking sidewalks.
What are you talking about?
It's the first
You had it up
one.
there, it's got the yellow. No,
Okay, give me a second.
there you go, that's it.
Sorry.
So that's an overhead of Kingsbury. You see the pool off to the right. And the large yellow rectangles are the shelter houses. And then the yellow lines are sidewalks that are being proposed. Now, that's not an engineered drawing. That's just a conceptual drawing of the sidewalks that will connect within that area. And then the sidewalk that runs over to the playground area. So it's that road that you're concerned about, Mr. Waxman. We understand that completely. We agree with you, we share your concerns. But it's this road, and that's the east-west road that I've been talking about. And as Mr. Mass said, and you've said, putting curbstones in there, or speed bumps in there, and then this road here. See, right now, if we close this drive off, coming off of East Second, this would be how you would get over here to park. Now, people may choose to rethink this and park in here now that they've got sidewalks access to the shelter houses. The sidewalks that we put out at Bronson have been very well received. People like that. They can roll things to the shelter houses. So that's the plan here.
Oh, I get it. I mean, I totally get it. I just, it's a concern.
I don't cite or it just doesn't work there because of flooding. That flood is far too frequent.
Why wouldn't we keep the, off the east side, Second Street going in and then still curving around? They could come in the parking lot and close off that east-west street, make more parking lot, and then they're not crossing any kind of street.
You still have kids with cars there.
Well, the
Keep
cars,
this,
yeah, keep that,
close this.
close that. And they would just come into the parking lot, and that's just a closed large sidewalk to cross over.
Well, I think that's, the problem is when you look at what they're doing in the long term down there. Is I think what you're saying, right, Mayor?
Well, long-term, this road's
I know you wanna
gone.
get rid of that.
That road's gone as well.
See, and that's what I'm thinking, yeah, you're trying to get rid of curving all the way around.
Probably have to make adjustments as it goes.
I hate to tear out too much until we really know what the final disposition of this park will be. I mean, it'll always be a park, don't get me wrong,
Right.
but, you know, we have a 10-year-old plan that needs updated. And whether or not the new look would include that road or not, I don't know.
Let's just put extra speed bumps in there, something, slow them down for now, just till we.
Yeah, and like you say, the ones that you lay down and
Yeah.
fasten in, that can be taken out,
Right.
fine. And if at some point we don't need them, we just take them out, and I bet we can find some place to put them.
Yeah. Run Jill's house on Wayne Street.
There you go. Playground looks awesome though. I mean, that's
What's
really,
that?
the playground equipment looks really nice. It's
Yeah, it
nice
does.
to see the handicap
Now,
wheelchair swing. That's part, and that's, I know that's a very expensive piece of equipment.
there was a suggestion, and I'll talk to Ms. Warnicki about this, but, maybe a covered sitting area, if that can be incorporated into the playground, so the responsible parent that wants to sit with their child while they play, would have a covered seating area.
That's a good idea. A couple park benches like they have at the splash pad, yeah. It's very nice.
More like a bus stop type seating area than not a full-blown shelter house.
Mr. Engel?
As this project goes on, there will be adjustments to this if need to be, right?
Wouldn't be a project if it wasn't, Mr.
That's what I was
Engel.
thinking. That case, a motion to suspend a call.
Okay, we have a motion to suspend and call. Second, Mr. Corbett?
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes,
And Mr. Engel?
Yes.
motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt, Mrs. Crutch. Second, Mr. Mass?
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes,
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
And Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
And this ordinance is adopted.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance approving and ratifying an exemption application and agreement for tax incentive in a community reinvestment area, number 4, between the city of Defiance, Ohio and
To Senderlo Curley.
Inc. and declaring emergency.
Mr. Leonard?
Yes, thank you. Last week, Tessenderlo Curley was in town for their official groundbreaking for their fertilizer facility out in Enterprise Industrial Park. That park falls within our CRA number 4. And one of the incentives that were offered to them in order for them to choose Defiance was participation in that CRA. 2 schools are involved, the Defiance City Schools and Ford County Career Center. They have each approved their respective paperwork to move this forward, and now it comes before City Council for, I believe, final approval. This would be a 90% property tax exception on the improvements that are made for 15 years. Both of those numbers fall within the parameters that are allowed within CRA number 4. In addition to that, the company will be making a 10% donation to the Defiance schools. 10% of the taxes that the school would have received if the exemption did not exist, and they'll be making a 2% donation to Ford County.
Excellent. Mr. Rusty?
If no questions, motion to suspend and call.
If we have no questions, we have a motion to suspend and call. Second, Mr. Waxler?
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crunch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes. Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt, Mr. Hancock.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mast.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crunch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
And Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
This ordinance is therefore adopted.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance directing the city administrator to apply for a grant from the Ohio Public Works Commission to assist with the replacement cost for the water lines and surface of the Derbyshire Drive area and declare an emergency.
Mr. Mack?
Yes, Mr. President. As the clerk stated, this ordinance would authorize an application to the Ohio Public Works Commission in the amount of $325,000 towards the repaving of all and new water lines for roughly half of the Derbyshire neighborhood, which consists of Derbyshire Drive, Huron Avenue, Wyandotte Avenue, Glenwood Drive, Vassar Drive, and Mayo Drive. The total cost of this project is estimated to be a little over $1 million. If all votes go to the affirmative, this project would be scheduled to bid sometime in spring, hopefully to be completed by the end of 2023.
Thank you. Mr. Corbett?
I know our neighbors on Derbyshire are looking forward to this project to start, so if there's no more questions, motion to suspend and call.
No further questions. We have a motion to suspend and call. Mr. Rusty?
Project's long time coming. Second.
Second?
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
And Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mast.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
And Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Right. And this ordinance is also adopted. With the items of legislation discussed and resolved this evening, we have times for citizens' concerns. Nope, Mr. Posey, why don't you come up to the microphone, give us your name and address, and you have 5 minutes to address council with any sort of questions or concerns you have.
My name is Lonnie Posey. I live in 1504 Dublin Court, Kettering Hills. I have some real safety concerns in that area. We have people that just don't have any compassion for the people that have to walk in their dogs or their grandkids or the bicycles. It's not just on Dearwood Drive, but it's also a Burning Tree and all the other side roads there. Let's see, Heather Downs, Pinehurst. What I'm asking is, and I've spoke with several of you already, that we find some solution to the problem of speeding cars down through there. It's getting worse. It's really getting worse, and I'm concerned about how these people. It's an older person establishment out through there. It's a residential area, and it should be of a great concern as to the safety of the people that live in that area. was told I had to have a petition to go throughout the area and let people know that what I'm trying to get done. But I'd like to, this is why I came up here to make it for the record. So if somebody thinks I'm soliciting out there, I'm not. So I just wanna make sure that, you know, this is getting worse. I walk my dog 3 or 4 times a day. And there's other individuals, like I said, and the grandkids are getting more. So you're getting a lot of younger residents in that area. And I have an idea where the problem is, but it's throughout the place, off the burning tree. It's ridiculous. You could sit out there. We did, and I appreciate the fact that we did have patrol out there. The policemen, patrolmen, they were throughout. I watched them come through, but this is getting more dire. And somebody's gonna get hurt real bad. And
We did ask Chief Schaefer to step up patrols. We know he did, as you said. And actually, Mr. O'Donnell and I were meeting with a patrolman a couple weeks ago, and that patrolman mentioned that a stop had been made. And I know you've requested signs, and I think that was what Mr. Mack was requesting of you, is that you get your neighbors to agree to have those signs installed. What we do sometimes, Mr. Posey, we get these requests from people to put up signs. Well, signs, for the most part, need to go in a certain designated area, so far from the intersection, blah, blah, and it ends up in somebody's yard. And then we get those calls. Why did you put the sign in my yard? Why didn't you put it in Flonnie Posey's yard?
go ahead.
Well, it wouldn't make any sense to put it in your yard. You're on a short cul-de-sac.
I'm the mayor of that cul-de-sac.
Yes, I well aware. I thought your wife was, but
I question it.
the longer streets, I agree with you. We would just like a consensus amongst the folks in your
I
neighborhood.
understand that. The 2 areas that really, on Deerwood, is one down by the Dares, where the old credit union used to be, from Domersville all the way around that curve. Those people are really in a lot of trouble, and they're no different. Also down there on the S curve, going back toward the apartment complex. That's really bad.
Okay.
But it's not just on Deerwood, it's on all of those Heather Downs, burning tree, you know, it's gotta be taken care of. You know, I mean, the sooner the better. And I'll have no problem getting a petition, I just don't wanna get called for soliciting, you know. I don't know all the legal aspects of it, but you know, I spoke to several of you, and I'd really love to see some, this way those people would know that at least somebody has a concern.
Right.
And to get it done and be, these young kids, these little grandkids, they're riding a bike. I'll be honest with you, I've given some bicycles away here recently. And these grandkids are coming to the grandparents' house, and it's bothering me.
Okay.
Really bothering me. And how's Sammy doing?
Sammy's doing fine.
Okay.
Yep.
There's a story.
I don't spend much time with him. As I said, I'm allergic to cats, but he's fine.
So, all right, thank you.
All right, thank you for being our guest. Citizens' concerns being addressed, is there a motion to adjourn for this evening? Mr. Engel, second. Mr. Mast, all those in favor of adjourning for this evening say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, we're adjourned for this evening. Have a good evening.